IVM.
This is Storytellers and Storysellers live on the IVM Podcast Network. This is Vineet Kanabar and you are listening to a very special episode. If any of you checked out the last solo transmission that I put out last week, I mentioned at the end that I had a very special guest coming to this episode, and I am extremely excited to talk to Mr. Vijay Koshy, legend in branded content. Someone I have worked with very, very closely. Someone I have fought with very closely as well because of the stuff that we've done together. And you very rarely make an omelette without breaking a few eggs. But Vijay sir, fantastic to have you on the show. Welcome to Storytellers and Storysellers, and thank you for making time on this lovely Saturday morning to chat with me.
Thank you so much, Vineet. It's a pleasure to be here, and that introduction was definitely very overwhelming. Yes, I do recall us having once in a while having friendly debates and this, that, and the other, but I think the outcome was definitely useful and relevant.
Absolutely.
So that helps.
Absolutely. I think when I joined TVF and Vijay sir joined in a couple of months after there, it was a group of people who were putting together something very, very new for the industry, which was not happening at that time. And when I say that it was an absolute pleasure to work with and learn from Vijay sir, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. And which is why I was so excited to bring Vijay onto this show. For those who don't know Vijay's story or Vijay's background, he's been in the industry for 20, 25 years. He's worked in broadcast, in new media. He's currently president of TVF. He's had a previous stint there as their head of revenue as well. But instead of me doing this introduction for you, Vijay sir, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your journey in media and content. I know you've done sports, there's been TV, there's been digital. Would love to open this episode up with some anecdotes and some of your learnings about the industry.
Okay, so before I start, I have two requests. One is, please call me Vijay. This Vijay sir makes me sound very old and almost like a dinosaur. The other thing is, no, I love it. Just Vijay works absolutely fine, and I say that to everyone across the board. The other thing, Vineet, before I start my story, I just noticed that most of the time the guests on the show have been, and I said guests on the show, have come in pairs. I'm alone here, so I was just wondering, what is the story here?
You're not alone, sir. I'm with you. But that's it. I mean, it's a great question, sir. And I'm actually
I'm talking about the previous right. My colleagues from TVF also. They've all come in pairs, and hence there was an observation. Right. I thought I must ask you this before this began.
Absolutely, sir. And I'm absolutely delighted that you pay so much attention to the show. But that said, when I started the show, this was supposed to be a creative versus business. You know how it is, the classic conflict that we deal with every day in our lives almost, right? And while it was a studio show, it was very easy to have two guests in there, conflicting arguments. It's easier to do it when you're there in person with two people, right? It's slightly easier to do it. When the lockdown happened, I started doing this virtually. And I realized I have a much wider pool of guests that I can access virtually, but with a certain limitation, right? When you have two people who don't know each other, directing the conversation between them, making sure that it doesn't, break down into an argument or someone is just talking. It requires, I feel like it requires me to be present there in person to read like body language and direct the conversation and steer it. I tried doing a couple of episodes with two people in there, but it felt like a challenge. It felt like it was something missing. So I've sort of moved the core format of the show to a single guest thing. And while I'll still do two guest episodes once in a while, that's the reason why you're here feeling all alone.
That explains it all. I'm feeling much better after hearing that. But the other thing that I wanted to also try and tell you is I'm always that extra curious. I will always ask questions. I will always, if I don't know or if I'm not aware, that curiosity bit in me is going to always open up and ask. And especially with young folks like you who are setting new boundaries, trailblazing across various sectors. I am always learning. So some cliches which have defined my professional career, at least, I've always been a risk taker. I've always been open to learning and asking questions all the time. And another big cliche is taking the road less traveled.
Absolutely.
Those were some of the things that have primarily defined what I've done over the years as far as my career is concerned. Like all South Indian families, parents expected to be engineer, doctor, CA, etc., etc. And I was definitely not cut out for any of those. And advertising just happened. I joined enterprise as one of my earliest enterprise advertising. This was the Mohammad Khan days.
Right.
And there was this gentleman called Mathan Varki who got me on board. Great experience working with them. So my first 10 years was the advertising part of the business, where I worked across functions, across agencies. So it was media planning and buying. There was enterprise, there was Lintas, there was Trikaya Grey.
Right.
And my last stint, I think probably in advertising was one of the, I think it couldn't get better than that, was with JWT Fulcrum, which was handling the Unilever business. And so, I mean, you were handling so many of the top brands of the country, and I was in charge of the entire niche portfolio,
right.
Niche, sports, kids, and print. So other than GEC and maybe regional, I was practically handling most of the portfolio then.
Right.
And in handling the biggest client in the country. And that's where the risk-taking part kicked off. From being in the media buying slot, I decided to take a plunge to the other side, which is in broadcast.
Right.
And when I took the plunge also, I was clear that I do not want to be the salesperson of the year. I do not only want to be the salesperson of the year, or I do not want to be just clocking the highest revenues target or any of those things. But I want to be able to make a difference, and I want to take up challenging assignments. And trust me, whatever I took up or whatever came my way, depends on how you want to see it, they were all extremely challenging. So I started my broadcast journey. I was with Channel V for 3 years. Post that, I was with ESPN Star Sports. Post that, I was with AXN Sony Pix. And trust me, all of these assignments in each of those large companies, and trust me, they were all very, very large in what they were doing, were not exactly the easiest of portfolios to handle at that point in time. Right. But having said that, I was always open to, but I was very clear, I would not do a GEC portfolio because it was relying only on numbers and CTRP.
Right, purely.
Yeah, and I wanted to be, like I said, make a difference. And you make a difference at the end of the day if you're able to sell a story.
Absolutely.
And everything is about stories, right? I mean, brands are all about stories. Why do I prefer a iPhone over some other phone? Or why do I prefer a Procter product over some other product?
Right.
Why do I prefer Coke over Pepsi? I mean, so there is a story. Whether it's political parties are all about stories.
Absolutely.
Sports is all about stories. Why do I follow MSD over someone else? I mean, those are largely the reasons why. So I was very clear that I will want to work for brands where I can make a difference.
Right.
And that's largely what I did with each of these assignments. And the content part was a very, very integral part in each of these assignments. So I don't think I've ever told you this, but I was part of the first reality show in this country.
Oh, wow.
When Channel V launched Coke V Pop Stars.
Right. This is
Channel Head, the Star TV.
Yeah, this is the way back when 2002, 2003, I think, was it?
2001.
2001, yeah.
The first, it kicked off then, and the first band that came out was Viva.
Viva, right.
It was like it was unknown territory. And my then boss, Raj Naik, he said, "Hey, listen, you're the original music man, and you've handled tough assignment. Why don't you take a stab at this?" And trust me, we were all learning on the go. The channel was learning on the go. The client was learning on the go. But eventually what came out was like a fabulous experience for everyone, including the audience. And I think that was the key factor, to keep the audience at the center of the whole thing.
I mean, we still remember the name of the band and the icon. I think still name some of the bandmates. I think there was Pratichi, Sona Mahapatra was on it. Sona Neha Bhasin.
Yes.
Anushka Manchanda. Yeah, those are all.
Yes. Absolutely.
Legends out of in their own right. Absolutely. So formative. I did not know that at all.
Yes, and I still remember the final concert. We expected, say, around 5,000-10,000 people.
Right.
This was in a school in Delhi, Barakamba Road.
Right.
It was a near riot situation. It was crazy. I mean, the crowd just poured in, and the sad part is we couldn't even get some of the sponsors inside from Coke, etc. In fact, CBL Srinivas, he was invited, and I had to see him at the gate and say, he said, "Hey, listen, no worries. As long as the crowds are in and it's a big success, that's all that matters." So that's
typical.
We did some crazy things there. Yeah, absolutely. Results matter. That's what he's all about.
Oh, what a guy.
Then I moved on to, absolutely. He's an awesome guy.
Yeah.
Incidentally, he and I have watched concerts together. We watched a Jethro Tull concert.
Oh, wow.
Practically holding hands in the Shanmukananda Hall, because it was a seated thing. So you had no choice. I mean, you definitely want to watch Jethro Tull rocking away, but it was a seated show. The next interesting assignment that I was part of was with ESPN Star Sports. Again, we did some crazy things out there. We managed to achieve the highest possible revenue on an India cricket match. And ESPN those days largely was all about cricket. I mean, there were no other sports. There was no Kabaddi Premier League, or there was no ISL, or there was none of those other things. Yeah. Although they did try to experiment with hockey at that point in time in some ways. But it was largely India cricket, and everything else was packaged around it. We've done some interesting things there, but one of the most interesting things that I'm extremely proud of is we did something called Harsha Ki Khoj, the dream job.
Right, the commentator search thing.
Yes. This is like a commentator's job is reality TV at its best. I mean,
absolutely.
You have to create stories on the go. And Harsha Bhogle is the ultimate commentator. And in fact, the brand that partnered was wanting to talk about confidence.
Right.
And
it was close up, I think.
Yes, you're right. And they found a lot of synergies in what a commentator does. And instead of doing some random other celebrity hunt and whatever else, they partnered with us on this particular show. And we had some very, very illustrious people who did participate in this hunt. In fact, the ex-CEO of IPL, Sundar Raman, also participated in this particular.
Oh, wow.
And he did manage to reach almost till the last stages of the selection. But that was a very, very interesting thing. Incidentally, the winner of that particular thing did intern with us at ESPN Sports Center for a while.
Right.
And he's ex-Maxis Bangalore.
Is Ananda Singh.
And yes, absolutely. And he's now one of the key part of the Times News team.
Right. That's fantastic. I think both those anecdotes or both those properties are super formative in how we sort of think of interesting properties and talent hunts now in digital. I think Popstars obviously sticks out in a big way because it was pretty much the first time we put something like this together. I think after that came Launchpad and everything else that channel we did, and now we have this entire sort of slew of reality TVs like Splitsvilla and all of the other love reality shows. But Popstars was pretty much the first one, and similarly with commentator Ki Khoj, with Harsha Ki Khoj, that's what it was called.
Dream job,
right. And I remember it being a rage when it came out. My dad is a massive mad cricket buff, and he was also very, very much like, "Hey, why don't you try for this?" I was like, I don't like cricket that much also. but
you're a Man U fan.
I'm died in full football fan, deeply. That's it. I'm much more interested on the administrative or the packaging side of cricket than the sports side. just for for a sort of tidbit about me. That was a great sort of opening set of content pieces or experiences to talk about, right? I think from my experience working with you, one of the things that really comes through is your belief in content, right? I think you talked about this before as well, about it wasn't just about putting the numbers up, and it's about making a difference. It's about telling great stories. It's also at some level about enabling great creative talent to find great platforms and their right audiences, right? But in the midst of all of these things, one key stakeholder, at least in our lives, are the people who pay for this content. And brands, when they're coming on board, I mean, sure, there are brands who have very little direct ROI expectation. There are the Red Bulls of the world who can choose to call themselves a media company, completely de-link their marketing, their content from their marketing. But then, on the other hand, we have FMCG brands, we have performance-oriented brands. Over time, what I've seen happen is that a lot of these brands also started having some kind of belief on content being able to deliver on metrics and ROI. Right? In earlier days, we would just say, hey, content is a great way to drive buzz or to drive reach or awareness. And now people are saying, hey, no, that's not enough. We needed to do more things for my brand. From your experience, sir, and I know, I mean, I've worked with you on this part of the sort of behavior science, media science part of it as well. I'd love for you to talk to us about a few cases where you've seen content outperform any other sort of media channel, right? And a couple of cases that spring to mind immediately from stuff that we have done together is this little known show. I don't know if anybody's seen it. I'm obviously joking. It's called Ye Meri Family that we did with Amphi and later Netflix as well. I would love to know from your perspective about these cases and about how these big decisions are made, right? Would love to get your sense on that.
Okay. So I kind of agree with what you're saying about the content journey. So before I try and respond on that, I just want to talk about our journey in TVF, the way we came about, because we were born and brought up in the digital ecosystem.
Right.
And for us, any and every revenue that we possibly could get to survive was through brands.
Right.
We had to hear them out. We had to understand their requirements and then work accordingly.
Right.
Yeah. So unlike traditional ATL, whether print, TV, radio, etc., you have inventory, you have 30-second spots, and you have sponsorship options, you have pre-roll, display, search, etc. We actually didn't have much of that. So we had to rely on brands and tell their stories through our content.
Absolutely.
So we were very clear that we had to walk the talk with them, irrespective or whatever stage of the journey they were in. We had to ensure that we educate them, we share our experiences, we share our learnings, and hope and pray that they get it and then accordingly take the plunge into the content world. So I'd just like to, before I talk about some of the interesting work that we've done, I just want to talk about the 4 or 5 buckets of possible clients, brands, partners that exist.
Sure.
And some of the reasons why they exist. And at no point in time would I fault any of them. They are in different stages of their own journey. So be it.
Right.
So the first one is, according to me, is denial. Yeah, the first D is denial, saying I don't need it.
Right.
I mean, why fix it if it ain't broke? I mean, so these are typically the traditional guys and possibly decision makers who don't understand or who've not experienced what digital content does to their lives.
Right.
And those are the reasons. And some of them are constrained by international brand guidelines.
Right.
Atlanta won't allow it. Something else won't allow it. So, and these are the restrictions. My country's culture won't allow it. And this typically happens with a lot of MNC clients also.
Right.
So it's not just the traditional clients that this thing. MNC clients also have these issues. The second variety is the guy who's the debater. He will talk about why do I need to do it. He will talk about the data-driven thing, because digital itself is so abused by data. Everything is measurable and super measurable and geo-targeted and you know, hazard such what is the ROI, how many leads do I get, how many conversions, the sales funnel, etc., etc., etc. So typically they will keep debating about it and never eventually get to taking a decision. I'm not going to name any of these brands or clients for obvious reasons, but you have to keep engaging with all of them. Absolutely. Then there are the ones that keep deliberating about it, saying, should I not? They're the typical fence sitters. And then they also get into this aur dikhao syndrome.
Right.
Ye dikhao, kuch aur dikhao. Haven't we gone through this journey enough number of times? You and I have gone for so many of these.
Absolutely. We're still going through it.
So that is one bunch. The next bunch is where I will probably try and take some names. It's the dynamic ones. When I say dynamic, I don't mean it entirely in the dynamic sense, but I'm saying they are it's like the fleeting, the topical, the urgent requirement. There is some crisis in their life or whatever. So, right. and the best example that comes to my mind, and you were part of this project, you were part of the planning, the execution, and I just came and basked in its glory, and I keep talking about it all the time. This is tripling with Tiago.
Right.
Tata Motors finally got a product which could appeal to the younger lot, but absolutely. Unfortunately, with close to 10 plus car makers in the country, and possibly 2 to 3 brands each of those car makers had, a prospective new buyer who could at best go to 4 dealers while he's in the process of buying a new car.
Right.
Unfortunately, when you have 30 models to choose from, obvious ones were Maruti, you had Hyundai, and possibly then you would look at a European car or an American car or
right.
or something else of that sort, or a Japanese car.
Right.
Tata Motors unfortunately never even
made the cut sort of.
Well into that consideration set. So, they were facing a bigger challenge. And of course, the primary thing was because it was always perceived as an older generation car, or then it was perceived
fuddy-duddy brand sort of.
BPO transport kind of a vehicle. Those were the issues that it was facing. I mean, no 25-year-old in his right frame of mind would have gone to a Tata Motors showroom.
Absolutely.
At that point in time, at least. And what did they do next? They went and signed up
Messi.
Lionel Messi was the biggest iconic. Messi is right now in the news for various other reasons, but right. But he's still loved and adored by audiences worldwide.
Absolutely.
And they went and signed up with him. As luck would have it, Messi had a tax scandal of sorts, and the brand had to pull back. And before that, they had actually named the car Zika.
Zika, yeah.
Which stood for Zippy car.
Right.
And then, oh my God, this is the virus story.
Another virus, another time.
For those who don't know, there was a pretty strong one that had engulfed some parts of the world, and no consumer again wanted to associate with a car brand which is also named after a virus.
Right.
I'm not going to talk about the brand that is getting affected right now with the current virus. And Tata Motors at that point in time, I think, was like, I mean, imagine the plight of the marketing team. You've pulled out all the stops. You've done everything possible.
I mean, you got Messi on board.
It can't get bigger than that. and still, if something has to go wrong, probably it will go wrong. So that was the case. And in that, I think it was more out of desperation that Tata Motors said, hey, listen, what do we do next? And I think that's when TVF stumbled on. And I think we also at that point in time had a great story. We went out to probably 20 odd brands in the country. And Tata Motors was one of the brave ones at that point in time to sign up for something like that. And I hats off to them because, I can't imagine too many, and Tata Motors as conservative as they come. Even then they were very conservative. Now of course they've opened up a little, but they were extremely conservative at that point in time. And for them to be able to sign up for something like this, I thought it was amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A little bit of backstory. There was a bidding war for tripling at that time. I won't name the other brand in the other agency, but there was a bidding war when we were blocking, tripling. But that's for another day.
We're still facing the repercussions of that once in a while. But that's okay. You have to live with it. As long as the intent was genuine,
as long as the intent was genuine,
we are clear in our heart. I think that's what matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm extremely clear about that.
Yeah.
I suspect there is a dartboard in many organizations with my face on it, and but the intent has never been to antagonize anyone. Intent has always been to work together and partner and get the best possible results. That's largely what we would have wanted to do. Absolutely. And to come back to the last stage of clients that we would talk about is the ones who've achieved nirvana status. They're the Dalai Lama as far as branded content is concerned. Why I say that is they have understood and accepted that, hey, there is a certain bunch of audiences whom we don't know.
Absolutely.
Who we don't know what gets them motivated, what engages them, what are their preferences. And there are these bunch of content creators who know what gets them all excited, and I will name 3 specific clients here. One of them is Amphi. A bunch of it's like a committee of clients and senior marketing professionals across companies like SBI and ICICI and Franklin Templeton, etc. But they've understood that, listen, the key investing guy or the one that really matters to them is the 25 to 35 sweet spot, the early jobbers and that. Yeah, if you get them is when you get good returns as far as the investment, and that's where the chunk of the population is also.
Right.
And all the traditional methods are not working with them. So they have shown the courage, the initiative to invest in stuff like this. A couple of other clients that come to my mind is Procter, the bunch at Whisper, the bunch at Gillette, Venus. Yes, absolutely. And they've accepted and they are not the ones who, Procter in my times and Procter otherwise also is very, very data driven.
Right.
But in this one, they've opened up and said, listen, there is only so much of science that I can apply to everything. There is something that matters as far as art is concerned. And that is what you guys do very well. Absolutely. And the last one, the third of the examples that I want to give is this client of ours who's partnered with us over the years in various companies that he's been or that he's founded. And this is an academy.
Right.
And I would like to talk about this one specific gentleman called Gaurav Munjal.
Right.
And he's as tough as they come, but his trust and his belief levels are in a different galaxy itself. So he gives us the brief, he gives us the thing, and then he doesn't really question us at all. That's the ideal relationship. I mean, when we did Kota Factory, everyone thinks Kota Factory was a story that we had. Actually, this Kota Factory emerged from a brief that Gaurav Munjal had given us, and then the TVF team came up with this particular story. And till the end, he didn't even know it was being shot in black and white.
Right.
And I mean, imagine a student's life in Kota. There have been other stories which show the very dark angle, but did it in the nice, sweet way and integrated the brand so seamlessly. So
it was beautiful. It was a great show. The director taking risks, brand still integrated. Is just a runaway success. Kota Factory. But I think season 2 is on Netflix, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
season 2 is going to be on Netflix.
Season 2 and 3 both, and in fact the original team which worked on season 1 is very much involved. The director of Kota Factory is very much involved in season 3. Yeah, Raghav Subbu is very much on, and the writing team also is very much involved.
Right.
So that is as far as so I just wanted to try and talk about the various buckets, and it is important for us to keep engaging with all of them. The wider the bucket, the client list, more likely each of them can then progress to the highest possible order. I mean, Dalai Lama status is most preferred, where they trust you blindly. But I'm saying, as and when they progress to any of those buckets, anything about deliberate is a good enough thing for us. Now, coming back to your questions about which are the content pieces that I would want to talk about. 3 that come to my mind. One is, of course, I mentioned Tripling with Tiago, and I give a brief background about it. And it's any content marketing forum that you attend, it does not go without a mention of Tripling with Tiago.
Absolutely.
And the way it has been integrated and the storyline. I mean, even now when I play that promo and the trailer to clients and whatever, while it's a great integration, it's such a beautiful story. And I have 2 elder brothers. I don't know if in my lifetime I will ever be able to take a road trip with them and go and do some crazy things. So it's not just about brand integration. It's about telling you a story that you're going to remember.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you're going to remember and you're going to recommend. That's all that it's all about. So that's something that I think TVF does extremely well.
Now I want to stop you for just a second on Tripling and spend a moment talking about the results side of it. I think everyone knows what a runaway cultural success it was, but the brand got a lot out of it, right? And we at that time, I remember we did this content research study with Millward Brown on it. That later became a sort of thing that TVF would do as part of sales. And I think that also helped cement sort of Tripling's status as the go-to sort of content case study, right? I think it wasn't just the front end, the great creative, the story that you talked about, but I think the effort we took to measure its impact also. I think that was one bit that really made Tripling stand out and then sort of set a template for other things to come. Would you agree?
Absolutely, you're right. And here, in fact, this research was not done by us. This research was done independently by the client. And I don't think we were even aware of it. And because they were sticking their neck out with such a huge investment on an unknown entity called TVF, they had undertaken this research. And on a lot of the parameters that were important to them, TVF managed to move the needle in a very, very big way.
Right.
And you're right. At least it got a lot of people coming to the showrooms and test driving the Tiago. And finally, I think at the end of the day, that's what a content creator can do. You can get the audiences to come and try, sample the product and stuff like that. And thankfully, this time around, Tata Motors had delivered the goods as far as making a really good product also. And I think it was a runaway success. And I think after a long time, a Tata Motors brand broke into the top 10.
Yeah, top 10 passenger vehicles by the end of the year. Yeah, 2016. For sure. Okay, so Tripling again is the first one. I'm sure you have a couple more that you want to share with us.
So the other one, of course, is the Ye Meri family, which hopefully someday in my lifetime I will get a web series done on the making of Ye Meri family because and again you are witness to it, so you know the journey that show has done. It's one of the sweetest shows that in fact it is rated as the top show on the top 250 IMDb shows from India.
Right.
Yeah, so it's still among and this is 2 years after its launch. It's still there on the top, and it's at a time when everyone on the online world was putting out shows which were about mafia, and it was about
absolutely. I think it came out 1 week after Sacred Games.
Yeah, exactly. so during all of that, here is a bunch of creators who are daring to put out a show which is about a family based in Jaipur, and guess what? It is set in the 90s.
Right.
So, I mean, who would think of doing those kind of things? So, but the show had a journey of its own. While we were very clear that we wanted to do this show, the only way we could do it was with brands.
Right.
And at that point in time, a particular brand had signed on, but had to then step out due to certain other reasons. Then we almost signed up with one of the largest platforms in the world, who then had other issues due to which they had to step out. But after it was all ready and done and we were going to drop it on YouTube, we went and showed it to the folks at Amphi and said, hey, listen, this is what it is. They said, brilliant, but what's in it for the brand? We actually, basis some of their objectives, we tweaked around with some of the episodes and delivered a show which was so sweet that even today, when Akarsh Khurana, who plays the lead, the father role, he gets stopped at airports and various other places saying, "Hey, you're the mutual fund ke papa." So that's the kind of recognition, and he doesn't miss an opportunity to talk about it. That while he's achieved so much of his own in direction and various other things that he does.
Absolutely.
He says that this is one thing which got me celebrity status all across.
Overnight.
So
Overnight.
Absolutely.
And if I'm not mistaken, you are also in that show.
For a nanosecond, it is like a miss and blink. But I was very clear that if I debut, then I will debut only on shows that land on Netflix. So there you go.
My debut was tripling, sir. So unfortunately, my debut was first season of tripling. I am the guy who yells at Amol, which is why he stops playing music and goes to meet his brother in the toilet.
Oh yeah! Oh yes!
That's
in the bar.
In the bar. That's me with a buzz cut wearing
nice.
Arsenal jersey, watching a Real Madrid match.
But we both have legendary roles.
Yeah, for sure. I think. Of the things, and TVF has obviously been super kind in terms of what, as a platform, and what is given to me in life. And one of the things that I absolutely don't forget is my first big break with tripling, and for you with Ye Meri Family. But again, I think again with Ye Meri Family, what we saw, and it's a theme, sir. It's something that I've also sort of picked up from you is how determined you are, and not just determined in a way that it's a sales number that I have to do, but it's about determined on getting the right partner, getting the right value with the right partner. And if I've heard this correctly, and if I know of you correctly, there is a Vijay Koshy walkaway that is very celebrated, especially among the sales guys that we worked with, right? Countless times people, Pranav Thakkar is a lovely guy who used to work with us at TVF, now at Universal, would tell us stories about how if the client was one of your deniers or debaters and you were like, ye aadmi ke saath baat karke point nahi hai, you would just be like, boss, great, I'm going, see you later. I just want to understand that sort of mindset, right? I mean, a traditional sort of sales or a revenue mindset is, okay, the client is always right, we will sit there, and even if the client is being unreasonable or stupid, which is a strong word, but we will still be there and figure it out. Whereas from you, that's something that I've also tried to pick up. Is where to draw the line and say, hey man, maybe this is not for you, right? And you're just not great to waste my time. So especially for the sales focused guys who are listening, I'd love to know how you decide where to draw that line. I mean, I totally love the denier, debater, deliberator, dynamic, and Dalai Lama sort of classification. But where do you pull a line? Is there a hack saying, okay, for a denier, this is how you need to approach it? I mean, just would love to get a sense of your process when it comes to that, and talk about where you decide to say, draw the line and say, okay, maybe this is not where I want to spend my time, even if the revenue is big.
So, all those stories that you've heard, please don't take them very seriously.
No, I mean, obviously they're dramatized for effect, I know.
No, I mean, at every party that happens, they keep throwing some of these stories that happen. But, at the end of the day, I believe, irrespective whichever stage the brand or partner is, they're engaging with us in a conversation because they believe we add value. But because, there's only so much time available in a day, and there are only so many resources that we have to put some filters at our level saying that, hey, listen, is he ready or not? Is he or she ready or not?
Right.
If they are, great, then we fast track to the next level. If they're not, no problem. Keep the conversation warm in some ways or the other. I mean, I may not particularly do it myself, but I'll ask the team and whoever else to keep engaging and keep sharing information like whatever. I mean, new releases, new interesting trivia, whatever, those kind of things. And that's largely what we try and do. So a couple of things that we try and figure out. I mean, we try and make this simple for them to understand.
Right.
Because branded content, there's so much happening in digital. there is influencer, there is social media, there is search, there is performance, there is something else. And then there is this animal called branded content.
Absolutely.
How much can a person try and grasp? Beyond a point, it's difficult for one person to be able to understand everything. So we try and make it as simple as possible. We actually walk the talk with them and take them to the whole thing saying, listen, this is why you should do it. Even if not with us, no problem. There are lots of other good creators. Start the journey.
Right.
If you want to learn, okay, the first step is, do you think it's important to do digital content? Yeah. So there's basic hygiene that you will do. If you're a car manufacturer, you'll talk about some review videos. You'll do features, you'll do some availability thing. Like Bajaj Auto did some interesting ones on road signals and road conversations, some interesting stuff they did on their own. So you have to then say, hey, listen, does digital matter? If it matters, does content in that space matter when consumer is searching for you? What is it that you want him to see? Yeah, so certain things like recipes will do so much for you in a food brand space. Right. But if you want to be part of a web series, you will have a longer lasting impact or those kind of things. Yeah, so you have to have that, and you'll also filter out the serious ones from the window shopping types, and so you'll put some other things like, hey, what's the kind of budgets you have in mind? The moment they say, oh, budget is not a problem, go ahead, do your thing. So you try and make it simple for them to understand, saying, hey, listen, if you did a set of sketches with us, this is what it costs. If we do a mini series, this is what it costs. So you make it as simple for them to understand.
Right.
And comprehend what is it they're going to get.
So what is the true meaning of budget is not a problem for us?
That's a dangerous one. I'm not, and the thing is, because it's digital, they think, oh, I can have a drone shot and I can have the guy coming from the helicopter and 5 lakhs will be enough, right? I mean,
right.
Why do you need more than that? So trying to explain to them that particular part of the journey itself is a huge challenge.
Yeah.
But then, we've done it for so long. We try to make it as simple for them to. And okay, the other thing that we try and do it is break it into media terms, saying that, hey, listen, if you were to do a video like this yourself, yeah, now that you've accepted and agreed that it is essential for your brand to move to the next level and you want to do it, let's break it down into simpler steps. If you were to make a video like this, how much would it cost? Including the concept, the writing, the production, the talent, the location, blah, 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 all of that.
And then the media.
Certain number. And then the media that you... And hey, guess what? This is typical advertising only that you're doing, right? You've created a piece of communication and then you're forcing it down somebody's throat.
Right.
And then you have to then explain to them that the engagement levels that you will get there vis-a-vis what you would get if you were partnering a creator is far more organic and the impact is far better. So once you explain those things, and then the client understands, or at least some of them do. You have to be patient with them, and you have to actually hold their hand and say, hey, listen, I'm with you. See, the important thing is trust. What a Procter or an Unacademy or an Amphy or any of the ones that partner with us, for them it is trust, because there are no audited measures or there is no CPRP in branded content. If it succeeds, it's great, but if it doesn't succeed, who's going to take the rap for it? So it's only the guys who really believe in something like this, who are willing to stick their neck out, will actually get into something like this.
You said something very interesting, sir. If it's going to succeed, how do you define whether it's succeeded or not? I know the industry holds certain measures, reach, viewership, time spent, stuff like that. But according to you, as someone who looks at both the sort of qualitative and the quantitative aspects of it, how would you define the success for a piece of branded or otherwise content?
So in quantitative terms, we typically get into the views and whatever else that we can deliver, and that is measurable, and that is also something that they can evaluate at their end.
Right.
If you're talking about larger associations and partnerships, the tripling example has helped us put together the research framework, which brands are able to then try and experiment with. And a case in point is the Amphy and Ye Meri family, where we actually did And they were talking about certain parameters, saying that, listen, how do I get a 25-year-old to understand that you can start investing at as low as 500 rupees a month? Or how do I get them to, they don't have to go pillar to post to invest. They can do it online. Right. Or there are certain things that are important for them. So we said, hey, why don't we do a research? We do this thing pre and post kind of a thing. And Millward Brown. And we've done it with Ormax. We've done it with Nielsen. We've done it with multiple other people. And that has actually worked. And there are things which they have set as important objectives at the start of the partnership. And TVF has managed to move the needle for them. Of course, there are some will say, oh, how many app downloads I will get, how many sales I'll get, how many leads I'll get. So we are not in the business for that. I mean, so there is this example that someone from Google itself gave me, saying that, listen, and you follow soccer, so you'll understand this. Typically in soccer, you have a goalkeeper, you have a set of defenders, you have midfielders, and you have forwards, and more often than not, it's the forwards that score the goal.
Right.
So why not have 11 forwards only? And so everything is not about scoring the goal. This is a whole process.
Someone needs to carry the ball to the forward. Someone needs to make sure it's not going into your own goal. Stuff like that. It's beautiful analogy.
Absolutely. And guess what? Ironically, it was someone from Google who gave me that analogy, and who are always into quantifying and measuring things. But that's the thing. So they actually also believe in the art form as much as the science form.
Absolutely.
And I think it comes through that brands all need to believe.
It comes through in how Google also does its own comps and own content. It's data driven, but not completely data oriented or data measurable. Vijay, that was just a great sort of summation of recent digital content campaigns that have really worked. There's a lot to unpack there in terms of the frameworks that you put through. I really loved your classification of clients and in terms of their maturity for digital content. On that note, we're going to take a quick break on storytellers and story sellers. Be right back after these messages.
I want to thank Intel for supporting our show. We're all loving working from home, but let's be honest, there are complications to this. For example, getting help from IT folks if your PC is down can be a challenge because you can't just walk up to the IT support desk anymore to get your issue sorted out. Well, you'll be happy to hear that I have a solution for all your work from home pains. The Intel vPro platform. The platform comes packed with Intel Active Management technology that lets your IT teams remotely manage your system, fix the problems even when the PCs aren't near them or are unresponsive, especially with the reduced desk site visits. So it means more time getting your work done and less time spent on getting support. What's more, the vPro platform also maximizes all your PC security, stability, and performance needs. Visit intel.in/morewithvpro, that's VPRO, to discover how you can do more of what you want and less of what you don't. If you're listening on the IVM Podcast Android app, you will be able to click the link that's visible to you now.
Welcome back to my chat with Vijay Koshy on storytellers and story sellers.
I want to turn the focus onto your time with TVF, right? It would be amiss to not talk about TVF and have you here. So, this is your second stint back at TVF, right? It was a very, very successful first stint that we all had. There was a bunch of us who were there together. For people who don't know, there were 5 Vs at TVF at once who were sort of either heads of or leading different departments. There's Vijay, who used to lead sales, Vineet, who would lead marketing. There was this wonderful gentleman called Varun Joshua, who was heading brand solutions. There was Vyom Charaya, also on brand solutions, and Vinay Pillai, who did product, right? So the 5 Vs. I think Vijay is the only one back, or the only one there now, and it's very interesting as of now. Never say never. But I'd love to understand, Vijay, from you. What drew you back to TVF, right? While the quality of content that TVF has put out has been top notch, right? I don't think there is any other creator, bar Tiger Baby maybe, who can put out web content at the level that TVF does, right, in terms of storytelling. But there has been some turmoil. There has been some flux that has been going on. In the middle of all of this, it was wonderful for us to see you head back there as president. Full disclosure, the previous president of TVF used to be my boss. So can you just walk us through what's it like at TVF right now and why you decided to head back there after your stint at Arre?
Okay, so before I respond on the head back, I want to talk about my journey and the beginning with TVF itself.
Sure.
As you can see, a lot of my professional career is sprinkled with assignments and places where it was not just about numbers and stuff like that. There was something that resonated with the content and that I was keen and interested in. Whether it was Channel V, whether it was ESPN, whether it was Sony Pics, whether it's any of those places. In fact, I also did a stint with Future Group in the retail space. That's a separate, we'll save that for a separate day and a separate conversation.
And you were head of the entire media function there at Future Group, right?
Future Media.
Future Media was that.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, that. And we did a large association with Tata Motors there also. But again, I'll save that for another session if at all. But, this digital bug was there from 1996. This is when rediff.com had come to the fore and they were talking about, and I used to keep saying digital, where the heck is digital? What is happening with digital? And I've seen it actually. I've seen stuff from manual typewriters to electronic, to telex, to fax, to pages, to all of that. But my point is, I've seen that journey and I was always very curious saying, hey, what's the big deal about digital and stuff like that? And after my last stint with Big FM, I said, hey, listen, now I've done TV, I've done radio. I definitely and desperately need to do something with digital. And, as luck would have it, there was this dear friend of mine who's in YouTube, Satya, and I reached out to him and he connected me with a few people. And one of them was Arunab, and he was the one who founded TVF and has done some path-breaking work. And of course, who has not heard of TVF at that point in time? There's pictures and permanent roommates and etc. etc. We met up, we hit it off well, and when we started, there was a time where TVF would do probably 3 web shows in a year, 2016.
Right.
And maybe 15 regular videos in a year.
Right.
15 to 20 videos.
15 to 20, yeah.
When I moved out in 2019, we ended up with almost like a dozen web shows, branded, non-branded.
14, 16, 18 in that year. Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah.
You can add all the other creators in the country and I don't think they would add up to what a TVF was trying to do alone.
Absolutely.
And probably 150 short form sketches and probably more than 50% were branded.
Yeah. And across 4 channels. What was one channel?
Exactly. So, we've come a long way, but there were certain other reasons, and I'd done this for a while, and I said, "Hey, can I try the usual, the bug of trying to do something new and this thing?" And Arre happened at that point in time, and Arre had lots of other interesting things also besides short form and long form video. They were very, very strong in the text and doodles and memes and all of that, and they had a voice.
My wife was the founding team of Arre at that time. I'm intimately aware.
Absolutely.
Lovely product that they've built for themselves. Very differentiated. And it was, again, when I found that you were moving to Arre, I was very excited for Arre as well in terms of how they can up their skill. But yeah, sorry, back to you, sir.
Trust me, a lot of clients who have invested in TVF actually called and told me that, hey, listen, we've never consumed TVF, but we've consumed a lot of articles and text from Arre. So, which was like, I had a great time at Arre and we were setting up a lot of interesting things. But, I think at some stage, I realized that my mind and my body had only moved from TVF. My heart was still very much with TVF. And I think that holds good for a lot of us.
Right.
That we still have a lot of emotional connect as far as TVF is concerned.
Absolutely.
As luck would have it, around that a couple of months ago, there was a change in strategy and a lot of initiatives that the leadership then had taken. Which was in the influencer space, and there was some in the non-fiction space, and which when they were taken seemed very interesting and worthwhile. And TVF, being the leader in the online content space, had to set the pace, and so they experimented.
Right.
But some of them were too resource heavy, and a lot of costs were being sucked into it, and it was not really giving us the returns that we wanted. And then Tiger and Arunab wanted to then rejig the whole operations and stay true to the original DNA of TVF, which is authentic storytelling in a very simple form. And while that happened, the earlier leadership then decided to move on, and I got a call back saying that, hey, listen, here is an opportunity, and the current creative team and business team look up to you, since you are this effective bridge between brands and stories at that point in time, and you have a great relationship with platforms. In fact, I was the part of the team that managed to get Netflix on board the first time around with the Emery family. There is an interesting story around that also sometime later. And they called me, and the interesting part is, you mentioned a turmoil, but TVF has such a awesome bench strength that while we miss some of the original creative bunch that moved on, but it's like the director of Kota Factory is very much around. That's Raghav Subbu. The director of Panchayat is very much around, Deepak Mishra. The writer of Panchayat is around. And a lot of the director of Girls Hostel is very much around. The director of College Romance is very much around. So there's a large bunch of the talent which is very much around. In fact, I know you're not much of a cricket buff, but I'll give you a sports analogy here. Is when the Indian cricket team was going through like 2008, 2010, there was a huge transition phase, and an era where Sachin, Sehwag, Lakshman, Dravid, Ganguly, Kumble, Zair Khan, probably all were retiring in and around those 2 years. And we were extremely concerned. I was very concerned for sure. I still am an avid sports cricket fan. Like, hey, what's going to happen to the Indian cricket team? And guess what? We are doing better than what we were doing then. So that's all because of the strong leadership and the strong bench strength that the Indian cricket team had at that point in time. And I give the similar parallel as far as TVF currently is concerned. And as we speak, we have 14 shows which have been signed up.
14?
Yes, across various platforms, which include Netflix, Amazon Prime, Sony Live, and a couple of other platforms. And these are in Hindi. And we've got 3 shows in Telugu, and we've got 1 show in Marathi. And,
yes. I did not know there was a Marathi show on the cards.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic.
So yeah. And the good thing is, this is not a show that we are making ourselves. We are partnering with one of the largest content creators in the Marathi space, Bhadipa.
Right.
And
so Vikram's lighting it, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic.
And we are then taking this onto a platform. So that's the huge difference between the TVF that we all knew. While it was like full of creative people, we were largely in our own world, and we were doing stories here. But now you'll see the new version of TVF where we are open to collaborating with a lot of external creators. And Bhadipa is one of them. We will hopefully reveal some of the other interesting ones, some from Hollywood, some from local creators, some from the music industry. So that's the direction that we want. We are now looking outward. We want to not just do well in the local domestic scene. Hopefully, TVF will win some Emmys in the years to come.
Inshallah, I really hope that happens. TVF was, I think, Sam was a judge a long time ago, but I hope that happens very, very soon. TVF winning an Emmy. Couple of quick follow-ups, Vijay, on this bit about getting back to TVF. I mean, it's great to know that the young Turks at TVF have sort of stepped up with their own big shows and now still around, even though maybe the older creative team sort of moved out. A great analogy that you gave us about the old guard being replaced by the new one, and obviously the creative field is such that everybody comes up with their own sort of new creative challenges, new directions, creative flux, and change is sort of constant. I want to ask you a couple of things there, though. In terms of, you mentioned Arunab and his role. The understanding that we have generally is that he's now well and truly back mentoring the team, even though he may not have an official sort of position, but he's a mentor as he's always been at TVF. Is that the sort of correct assessment in terms of his role back?
So he has his own comic book company, Indusverse. Yeah. So
incidentally, I made the cover for that.
Wow, I didn't know that.
The red box that it comes in.
Nice. So that's what takes up a lot of his time. But yes, along with Tiger, he is there to mentor and guide us on a case-to-case basis as and when required. That's largely what his role is. But he's not involved in the day-to-day functioning or anything of that sort. But he's someone that we've always looked up to as far as the creative part of TVF is concerned. And that's there. And the amazing part is the directors that I mentioned, or the writer of Panchayat, Chandan,
right,
is now featuring in interviews with Anupama Chopra, but that's the first big show that he's written.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. And Kota Factory was directed by Raghav Subbu. That's the first big show that he's done.
Yeah. So actually, Raghav did Bachelors as well, and I think Bachelors is a big show. I know inside TVF we tend to call it one of our sort of comedy things, but in my opinion, Bachelors 2017 biggest show of the year, Bachelors, if I remember correctly.
I'm going to agree with you on that front, but I'm saying,
I'm fully with you. I know,
yeah. So TVF, I think, knows when the young talent is ready. Yeah, ready to take the plunge and ready to do the big things. And you'll see lots more interesting stuff coming around the corner.
That's fantastic. I think it's very heartening to see new talent who's already proven themselves take up the mantle at TVF. I know that the previous creative team also has some plans, and there's another setup that's kind of coming through. But it's great to know that despite the flux, there's a sense of stability at TVF, and from talking to you, that sense comes to me that you're also a big part of that stability sort of coming back with your sort of experience with the company and your old hand ways of working at TVF. Vijay, I want to flip this over from talking about the serious stuff to turn it into slightly something that I think this is the first thing that we connected over was music, and I remember us having a long chat about Jethro Tull. I think the trigger was your collar tune was a Jethro Tull flute piece.
Buri.
Correct. So, I mean, I just want to pick at that. Your relationship with music is inspiring to me, right? I am as invested in music as the next guy, but you have a way of not just keeping that to yourself, but also sharing it with so many interested people that get inspired by that stuff, right? And it's a great connection driver. Can you tell us how this relationship with music started? I'm sure it's a deeply personal thing, very young. I'm sure you got into it, but how has that sort of stood you in good stead over the years? I'm sure there are many people who know you by your music updates as much as they know you by your achievements in content and branded content.
Okay, so inherently, I'm a very introverted person, and I think I'm extremely boring to have a conversation with, and
I would disagree.
But and there I rely on certain of my hobbies or my passions, and those help me start conversations with people. And some of them, I mean, you've seen the music part of it. There's music, there's movies, there's sports. These are three things that I use to have conversation with people. And in the movies part, I could be talking about some movie in the 1940s. It could be a Spanish movie. It could be a Japanese movie. It could be a Mallu movie. It could be any of those things. And in sports, I remember there was a gentleman in HPCL who we used to have meetings. We used to have hour-long meetings. 55 minutes, we would discuss the Australia-England cricket match. Imagine two people, one working for a PSU company like HPCL and one working for ESPN, and we're doing a sales meeting. Right. And in a 1 hour long discussion, 55 minutes, we're discussing that non-India cricket match. And 5 minutes later, so, I've got the guy on my side because I'm talking to him on what he likes, what he enjoys and stuff like that. So, And in the end, hey, listen, this is the new thing, and these are some of the stuff that I think will work for your brand.
Right.
And he said, yeah, sure. Where do I sign? So these are more, and if I were to quote a small thing about La La Land, I think Emma Stone, she says, people love to hear what other people are passionate about.
Right.
And that passion shows in your eyes.
Absolutely.
In some of the WhatsApp messages, it may not show, but people know that you're passionate about it, and they will either love you or some of them may hate you, but they will never ignore you.
Right.
And I guess I will lose a few friends in the process, but a lot of them have actually now started sending me some stuff that they think is relevant. You send me occasional stuff from the music space and movie space, and it just keeps the conversation alive. How much can I talk about my work? How much can I talk about something else?
Absolutely.
So these are just conversation starters.
Absolutely. I think it's an amazing, simple and very human way of doing it. And I know, there are certain people who will try and, go through somebody else's LinkedIn, try and pretend that they're interested in the same things as you are when they're trying to do a sale or something like that. But I have always found the way you approach it to be very much more human, much more interesting, and much more agenda less, even though as people in the world of business, we always tend to have some kind of agenda that comes up or something that will crop up from a conversation. But I really love the music feed, sir. And I've been receiving it now for about 4 years now, and I have always found it either comes to me at a time when I really need it, and I just look at it and I smile. And if it's something super relevant, I always try and send you something back as a sort of thank you
so
for
much.
what you have sent to me.
Just pass it on.
Bilkul, for sure. It's been an absolute pleasure. I know you already talked to us about some of your personal motivations and personal learning. So I'm going to try and ask you this as simply as possible, right? You've been in this business 25 plus years, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely.
Right. My sense is somewhere between 28 and 30 years is where I'm going to put it. I'm sure there is nothing you haven't seen, sir. There's not a type of deal that you might not have done. There's not a type of success that you might not have seen. There's not a type of, difficult, insane, challenging, crazy, happy type of client that you might not have met, right? Then what is it 25 plus 28 years in that drives you? And I know you as one of the most, like I mentioned this earlier as well, one of the most driven, one of the most determined people. I wouldn't say that you're determined to a point of a fault, but there is a certain determination within your cautious optimism in things as well, right? How do you keep that going? I am asking you this as much as sort of personal advice, as much as it is about your way of doing things. But you know how this business is. One day this client is fantastic and the project is a go, and next morning 6:30 a.m. you'll get a message saying, oh no, we have some issue happening and it's not going to happen. Or somebody's going berserk over some minor random thing, and you're on a 5.5 hour call with them trying to explain why their logo can't be 2% bigger, right? How do you manage all of this and still come back next morning, keep yourself going, and keep chasing the highs in this business, sir? What keeps you motivated?
I think the first thing I have accepted is what is not in my control. I cannot change, and I have to accept it. Yeah, because there's only so much that I can do about it. And if I'm going to let it bother me, or if I'm going to let it affect me, and if I'm going to start bursting my arteries over it, then it's not worth. And so many years of experience helps. When I was maybe 20 years younger, I would have probably been flying off the handle much more than what you've seen me do earlier. But it's just that it's just over the years and okay. The other thing is there's so much happening now. Yeah? There's so much. If I'd continued in probably my broadcast roles, I see a lot of my peers today in broadcast who probably can't even spell YouTube. Just the fear of the unknown is there.
Right.
Oh, what is happening in digital? What is this? And all these big terms that people throw around. That curiosity bug also is not as much. They're happy with the
status quo.
The tried and trusted is fine. So, and I've always been happy to try out new things. So that is what, in fact, one of my favorite podcasts is also The Seen and the Unseen.
I love that show.
again used to be one of the best ones on IBM.
Right.
And I don't know where it is now, but Amit Verma's shows are a big this thing. They've put up another one called Econ Central. Amit Verma and Vineet call, and they simplify things so beautifully, and everything is incentive driven. Whether it's what PM Modi is talking about, or whether what MS Dhoni is doing, or whether whatever is happening wherever is incentive driven.
Right.
So those are very interesting things, and youngsters like you keep me on my toes. Yeah, that there is so much that you guys are doing. I mean, in the animation world, in the gaming world, in the licensing world, all of it. So there's so much to learn. There's so much to do. And as long as you keep an open mind, it's very interesting. And I also try and keep my personal biases out of things. I mean, it's like, just because I don't like it or I don't click on a particular thing, I don't like trance or I don't like a particular form of music or a particular form of, doesn't mean that the guy next to me doesn't like it. So as long as they're open to it, and I don't pass my personal judgment on any of the work that even TVF does or any of the other people do. As long as there's like, I mean, there's an audience that watches Salman Khan movies and there's an audience that watches Badai Ho movies.
Right, absolutely.
And they coexist. I'm just happier that the audience for Badai Ho kind of movies is increasing. And I will not refer to the other part of it right now. But so the audiences also, tastes are improving. They also, and I think OTTs and all of them have also opened up a new world for them. Interesting stories that they can relate to. All of that is what keeps me going. Yeah.
That's a great summation of the things that you talked about. One theme that really emerges, Vijay, out of how you talked about your clients as well, out of how you talked about the audience as well right away, is a little bit of empathy and a lot of non-judgment, right? Because in the entertainment business, how our customer, which is the audience, chooses to spend time, chooses to spend their money, is not for us to judge. It is for us to understand and then leverage, or understand and then create, right? And I think that's something that comes through beautifully in how you put that last bit there. Vijay, my last sort of question to you. It's a question that I ask everyone who's on this show, but specifically I'm interested in your recommendations for our listeners, right? Would love to hear one, maybe more recommendations of pieces of entertainment that are either very close to your heart or have been formative in how you sort of deal with the industry or how you view the industry. So recommendation from you, Vijay, for our listeners.
Okay, so in the, I'm not much of a book reader. So podcasts are very, very interesting. Like I mentioned, The Seen and the Unseen is something that I religiously try and catch, along with Econ Central, and revisionist history from the international one that Malcolm Gladwell does. Those are things that I really, really follow. Besides your storytellers in story, STSS, and there's another interesting one, Filter Coffee, which Karthik does. Right. That's also another. Also, because y'all have such a variety of guests, it's not restricted only to media or any of those things. So, which is interesting. Because I would have never come across all of those people. So I then look up those people. What do they do? What is the line of work? How is it relevant to us? Not relevant to us. So it's a huge eye opener for people like me. So that is something that I follow. In the movie space, there's one go-to movie for me all the time. Whenever I need to get pepped up, is the story of Andy Dufresne and Red. And you guessed it, it is Shawshank Redemption. And I can watch it n number of times and feel, and there's a great high as far as life is concerned. The other movie that I recommend, I don't know how many people would have seen it. It was made in the 1960s and there is a Hindi remake of it also. And for a change, I prefer the Hindi remake over the original Hollywood one. It's called 12 Angry Men.
Right.
It was made in the early 80s, called Ek Ruka Hua Faisla.
Ek Ruka Hua Faisla. Great movie. Just a great movie.
And the entire movie shot in one room, largely.
Yeah, right next to a railway track.
Correct.
Beautiful movie.
And, I use that analogy as far as our work is also concerned, because, there's a bunch of 12 people, one of them believes in a particular thing, and then how he goes about convincing the other 11. The 11 are not in favor of him at that point in time, but then slowly and steadily, one at a time, he keeps getting them onto it. And some of them are protesting vehemently, some are getting angry, some are getting upset, and all of that, but he still doesn't lose his calm. I am not that guy all the time. I lose my calm once in a while, but that's the role that we in the content business are playing. And we have to try and get brands and partners and clients to start believing this whole story. And those are the things that I particularly trip on.
I absolutely love your recommendations, Vijay. Ek Ruka Hua Faisla is, I hadn't thought about that movie probably in 5-6 years now. What a great film, and absolutely important for anybody who's in a sort of persuasion sort of role where getting consensus and alignment is something that's important, especially on new things. Vijay Koshy, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for making the time. It's always a pleasure talking to you, sir. And over the years, I've become an even bigger fan of how you look at things. And it's slightly different, actually way different from how I have approached things in my sort of youthful exuberance and excitement. But it's always a sense of stability and always a sense of experience that comes through speaking to you, sir. I hope you had fun. I know we're speaking for long after a long time. And it was totally awesome to have you here. I hope you had a good time, sir.
I had a lot of fun, and it was great having a chat with you. Look forward to doing lots more interesting conversations. And I am definitely following all the good work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, sir. And I wish you all the best with the new stint back at TVF. We're very excited for this sort of second generation or next generation of TVF talent to take the helm and lead us into some even more amazing content coming up.
Thankfully, on that one point, I just wanted to add, I am ably supported by two long-serving members at TVF, and both of them whom you know. One who now heads our studio, a gentleman called Arun Kumar,
right?
And he is the champion behind putting up. And in these tough COVID times, he's been putting up all these shows. Don't ask me how, but he's
absolute unsung
magician.
Hero at TVF. Arun Kumar, executive producer on almost every show that
absolutely,
goes out.
Absolutely. And part of a stellar cast also. He features in a lot of our shows also.
Yeah.
Plays some amazing roles.
For people who've seen pictures, he's the guy who keeps bothering Jeetu about a cigarette when he goes down for a break.
And the other gentleman who is like my right hand is, and a dear friend, is this gentleman called Shreyansh Pandey,
absolutely,
also known as Sherry.
Sherry Pandey.
I think he converses with brands, with platforms, with practically anyone and everyone. He plays multiple roles in the system. And thanks to these two gentlemen and the rest of the team, I think you'll see a fabulous slate of shows coming from TVF. And you'll see some interesting stuff in the audio space also.
The audiolized version of Permanent Roommates is just out. I think maybe a month ago or so.
He said, she said. He said,
she said is what it's called. Right, correct. He said, she said is what it's called.
You'll see lots more in the near future.
Fantastic. Great to have you, sir. And great to know that TVF is going from strength to strength with your stewardship. With that, we come to the end of a great episode of Storytellers and Storysellers. At least I think so. I hope you guys like it as well. At the end of this episode, this is Vineet Kanabar and Vijay Koshy saying goodbye.
I hope you enjoyed that show. I'd like to thank our sponsors and Intel for coming back to us. We love our sponsors. If you'd like to be one of them, do reach out. So really cool week on the network this week, right? Started off with a bang. Abhijit Ganguly was on Cyrus Says. Funny comedian. I think you guys will enjoy that. We had Dimant Parekh on Advertising is Dead. Dimant's the founder of Better India. Govindraj Athiraj is also on Uncle Please Sit this week. That's a really fascinating show which they talk about fake news. On The Habit Coach, there was a crossover event with Aditi Surana from Absolutely Right. I think you definitely enjoyed that. And last but not least, definitely a show I'd love you all to check out. We have a new show called This Round Is On Me. It's hosted by Gauri Devi Dayal. If you remember, Gauri and I worked on a show together called The Kolaba Cartel a while ago. Fun show. If you haven't checked that out, do check that out. But this is a show where she's talking to a lot of different people in the food space. Her first guest is Harsh Mariwala, legend in his own time. I think you'll really enjoy that show. But with that, we hope to see you again next week.
Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, Don Bradman, and now Cyrus Brocha. Okay, probably not in the right company. I mean, Don Bradman is Australian. But it's called Cyrus Says, a wonderful show about everything. Find the show on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts.